More grammar. So Ann B wrote a post commenting on my post from April on Peikoff course homework 1 question 5, which is this quote from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. So overall, it seems like Anne agrees with my April analysis. I'm going to start a reply here. Okay. All right, so I say, regarding this, what we say here, I commented in April, Peikoff says that the noun clause, what we say here, is separate, not part of the main clause. I analyzed the noun clause on its own below, but also treated it as nested within the main clause. I Googled some for views on the right way to think about clauses that seem to be nested in other clauses. So the nesting thing is something that has come up quite a lot. Where am I? Okay. Some discussions on the list, and I was initially pretty confused. I think I'm still somewhat confused, but maybe less confused than I was. So in Anne's email, she mentioned that Peikoff went over this in the lecture. So this Lincoln sentence. So I brought up the lecture in Otter, and I'm going to play a bit of it that I think is relevant.
Well, that what we say here and what they did here are certainly two clauses. What about all the rest of it? Don't they have subject and verbs? So you didn't, your clauses have to exhaust your whole sentence. By the time you gave me the non-main clauses, but what about the main clause? What about the world will little note nor long remember? That's a clause, right? Why is it a clause? What's the subject? World. Now think, what is the verb? Now you got a tricky question. What is the verb? Will note, and what else? Well, no, nor is not a... Remember, this is what's called a compound verb. It's just one clause because it's only one subject, world. But you add two verbs. So it's simply considered a single clause with a compound verb. So the verbs are will note, and then will is implied for remember.
Right, so I guess I disagree that... Like, I don't think this part is a complete thought. Like, if you just break it up into its parts, like, the world will little know what? What will it little know? The world will long remember what? Like, what is it that it's not going to long remember? There needs to be something to complete this. You can, of course, have just a subject and a verb, like I ran or whatever. I ate. But like it doesn't. So I guess that's the source of the disagreement, or at least part of it, is that Peikoff is saying this is just a clause by itself. And so if he says that, then he can maintain that like this is not part of the main clause. But like if you think this is a clause and this is a clause, and then there's no like actual conjunction and you don't think this is nested, like how do you bring these two together? Like is this whole thing like some sort of super clause? Like there's something strange about Peikoff's view, I think, that I mean maybe it could make sense. I don't know. I haven't really thought it through, but it seems strange to me. All right, let's continue with Peikoff. Oops.
What is the whole main clause? Now think. What is the whole main clause in the first line there? The world will little note nor long remember. Well, and then, what we say here is a separate clause, right? It has a subject, we, predicate, say, right? Therefore, what part of speech is what we say here? It functions as the object of note and remember. Therefore, it must be a noun. Only a substantive can be an object, right? So, if we want to analyze it, we'd have to say the main clause is the world will little note nor long remember that. And if we break what up into that which, and then the rest is what type of that. So, we break what up into that which, and then if we break what up into that which, and then the rest is what type of that. So what we say here is a noun clause functioning as the object.
Okay, I'm not sure about the that which thing. I think what he's saying is, like, he's using that as almost like X. So if we want to analyze it, we'd have to say the world will little nor long remember X, and then X is this thing, okay? Which I think is what Anne was getting at here. He breaks up what into that which. I don't get the which thing, but I'm just gonna. I don't know that that's super important, so I'm just gonna. And then he puts that in the main clause and what in the subordinate clause. So I'm having trouble following Peikoff on this point. But I think I think Anne might have also been having trouble. It's possible that she's reading him better than I am, but I'm not sure. But let's just see. So what Anne actually did, I included the subordinate clause inside the main clause because I think it's part of the main clause. Well, I agree with that. And the reason that I agree with that is what I was saying earlier, which is that this stuff needs an object. It needs something in the object role. And this is a noun clause at the appropriate place to serve the object function for this stuff. So this is nested within this whole expression. This is part of this clause, which is how I marked it. And if Peikoff is saying something to the contrary, I think he's wrong, and I don't quite follow his theory. Okay. Then I think Peikoff did the second main clause, the one I called clause 3, differently. He says it can never forget without a that. Yeah. Let's go to the audio tape, I guess.
What part of speech is little? But we've said is a conjunction. And give me another main clause now that can stand by itself. Yes.
I love how you can hear the New York City noise in the background. Anyway, tangent.
It can never forget, right. And subject it, predicate can, never adverb, and forget is again an infinitive.
Let's go over that again.
And subject it, predicate can, never adverb, and forget is again an infinitive. It is unable to forget, you see. What they did here.
So regarding Peikoff's statement about this, where is it? Right, forget being an infinitive. I saw this sort of point somewhere. I couldn't find the exact thing. But basically, one way you can tell that it's an infinitive is, okay, so you could find websites saying the infinitive is used after modal verbs like can, what is it? Will, shall, may, might, must. And part of the difference is that so the infinitive doesn't get inflected, basically. And so I just made a little example here. So if you consider So just considering like to be and its inflections. So I've got some example sentences here. So I'm using to be as the actual verb in these sentences by itself with no modal or auxiliary or anything. And so you see that we have like to be is very heavily inflected. So we have I am joking, you are joking, he is joking. So there's a lot of form changes. Whereas when we introduce this auxiliary, I think part of the reason, at least part of the reason that they say it's bare infinitive and that you can tell it's bare infinitive is there's no inflection. So I must be joking, you must be joking, he must be joking. It's all the same. And so likewise, like with forget, it's like I forget, you forget, he forgets. So that's an inflection. But then if we bring in can, you say I can forget, you can forget, he can forget. No S. So that's a difference. All right, so I just pasted that in there. What else? So Anne asks at the end here, was I wrong to say that what is the direct object of each subordinate clause? No, that's totally fine. Maybe I should just say it's a pronoun that introduces the clause like Justin does. Well, so reading the sentence, like, where's the beginning of this thing? Look at how much analysis for this one sentence. Okay. Like it's introducing in the sense that like if you're reading left to right and you're not doing detailed grammar analysis, it's like you go no like da da da. Oh hey, there's the what. This is a new, and this indicates that this is going to be like a new conceptual unit here. But that doesn't mean that when you pick apart this unit, you can't also say it's the object, which that's how I analyzed both of them. So I think that's fine. Let's see. And let me scroll up to where this point starts. Peikoff says what is a conjunction? Okay. So maybe this is the confused mix view, because I think Eliot's persuaded me at least that like if we're calling something a conjunction, it should, well, so I guess the way Peikoff is analyzing things, well, like his view I think is somewhat consistent with a conjunction view because he's pulling one clause into two separate clauses. Like or does he have the same view? Wait, let's see. This is a lot of stuff what we say here. Okay. What we say here. So this was clause 2, or that's how Anne's numbering it anyway. Dependent clause 2. Okay. So right, so Peikoff's view is like partially consistent with a conjunction view, but the thing is, like, it's within this clause, this word has a function. Words like the fanboys for and nor but or yet so, or while in where's Eliot's thing? Where is it? Right. I drink white milk while tall John quickly eats really great cookies. This isn't serving a function. This isn't serving the function of like a core structural element within the clause that it appears before under either view. Like here it's just connecting. Under the conjunction view, it's just connecting, it's conjoining. Under the relator view, John eats cookies is the core stuff, and wall is just, again, it's like a connector relator thing. It's serving an important role, but it's not like a core subject verb object structural role. Whereas within this is the object. So this would be like an objectival conjunction or something, which seems kind of strange to me. So I'm not convinced on this Peikoff view as Anne relates it. Just briefly summed up my thoughts regarding conjunctions. All right, so I'm looking at Anne's markings for this sentence, and I was very tentative on mine, so I might wind up changing this. I found the marking system a little difficult to map to this, because this is a sort of a strange verb form where you've got like the compound verb and then the nor stuck in the middle, and then each verb has its own adverb, but there's one auxiliary verb that applies to both of them. So I found this very tricky. I'm going to say that, actually. So yeah, I just made some comments regarding the markings and how I thought they were tricky and what I did. All right, so I finished this email, but it's too long, so I'm just gonna send it as it is and try and keep in mind to reply more separately to stuff next time, because yeah, this is a monster. Like Elliot like reads books quickly, and he would look at this email and be like, "Oh my god, this is so long." So, okay. All right, I'm gonna look at this follow up. Oops, no, that's not the one I wanted. Yes, this is the one. This follow up on this grammar thread that's been going on for a while before I start looking at more new stuff. And written a lot of new, opened a lot of new threads, which is good and cool, but I wanna prioritize the older stuff first. So Anne says, because somewhere I was expressing confusion about fill the same grammatical role. And I think what Anne was saying was basically like she says that wealth is important as a noun phrase. It can serve as a noun as a sentence. I think this is the important thing. The idea is also a noun phrase. So basically, she's saying it's like a noun, right? So I was reading it as like her saying something about this sentence, I think, but it was more like they're both nouns. Like you could have the idea is true, just delete this, or you could have that wealth is important is true if you just delete idea. So they could both be a subject. And you could have like Justin is learning the idea, or Justin is learning that wealth is important. So they could both be an object of learning, so they could fulfill the same role. So that's fine. So Anne asks, what do you think the main clause is in this sentence? And I think it's the whole thing, which is why I only marked the like inner clause because there was only one like top level clause. So I didn't think it was important to mark that. Like, yeah. So I say relator. So Anne's quoting me my analysis here, like my current analysis. That relates the nested clause to idea and makes the entire clause serve as an adjective. And says, this is where I get tripped up. Is that part of the nested clause or not? So I think that this that this particular that in this sentence is not strictly a part of the nested clause. It does connect the nested clause, but it's not a part of it. On the other hand, there are that's which do function as part of the clause, like the car that is shiny was valuable. Here, that is the subject. It's relating and it's a subject. So it's wearing two hats. See, this is why there's only one that in this sentence, but Elliott's little diagram shows it twice. Oops. Whereas my hope that you win by 20 points is intense. That is not, that is only wearing one hat. It's not a part of the sentence. I'm saying, I should say, it's not a part of the nested clause structure. All right, so Anne gave some examples of a clause breakdown for the sentence that we're talking about. And I said what I would do is basically, this whole thing is a clause, and this is a clause, and this is a group of words functioning as an adjective. So this thing that I have highlighted right here, I'm not treating as a clause. I say this group of words contains a clause, but that's different than being a clause. And Anne also asks what to call that, and I just say I think it's a relator. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, so in this other email on non-finite verbs from a few days ago, Anne just found some examples of, because I'd found a dubious source that said participial phrases have to be set off by commas, and she found some counter examples. Basically, where if the participial phrase is restrictive, you don't need a comma because it's too essential to the sentence. She is a lady making me cry. Right, so you can't delete making me cry because she is the lady is kind of vague and unclear. I saw the waves crashing onto the surfer. Here, crashing onto the surfer tells us something very specific about the waves, what they were doing. It's not extra information, it's essential to the sentence. Right? Yeah. And it's kind of funny to come up with a sentence where, like, this wouldn't be restrictive because it's like, it's not essential. It's just sort of like a side comment. Like you're sort of indifferent to the surfer. Like crashing onto the surfer, comma, the waves were large and lovely. Like, oh yeah, the main thing is they were large and lovely. And by the way, they were like drowning somebody. Okay. Right, so here's another one. The tourists eating ice cream cones were not allowed into the museum until they finished eating. This would even be a better example with this truncated because it's like, because then it makes it, this would be more essential because like the tourists not being allowed into museum kind of sounds kind of weird until you get this bit of information. Like, oh, they were eating ice cream cones. The museum doesn't want people dripping their like vanilla ice cream all over the paintings and sculptures and stuff. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Anne. Makes sense. So Anne was going through some examples of when being used and from the dictionary, and she said she's got this example, ask him when he's next coming home. And I said, why didn't you do like a 2-clause reading of this? And she says, I read the sentences, ask him when are you next coming home? Like, you ask him this thing A conjunction construction would be ask him at the next time he's coming home. All right, so I was looking at, I jumped back to the earlier post in this sentences with when thread, and I looked at the dictionary, and I realized that there's a way to tell if a when is serving as a adverb or a conjunction. So let me go through this and hopefully we'll get the method. So it's just word substitution basically. So Anne correctly says that when is an adverb here. So this is a dialogue, which can be a bit trickier, but I think the method still applies. The principle still applies. So somebody says, I did tell you about it, and the person replies, when? I don't remember. So when adverb is at what time? So that's the definition, Webster's third. So if you just substitute at what time, I don't remember, that's sensible. At what time are you going? At what time is the baby due? Or, I mean, you could say, it says in what time period. That might work a bit better for this example. So now we get to a conjunction. We'll go when you're ready. So conjunction at or during the time. The time. We'll go at the time you're ready. Tell me at what time to start. Adverb. Skipping this one for now since excuse me, since this is the controversial case. At what time do you expect to have the project completed by? She was only 20 at the time she had her first baby. He was shocked at the time I told him. I hate it. They might sound a little awkward here, like both possible options that I've been talking about, but I think at the time sounds clearly better than at what time. So I think it still applies. I went there at the time I was a child. I was just getting into the bath at the time the phone rang. So now going back to the controversial case. Where is it? There we go. Ask him at what time he's next coming home. Adverb. Easy. Cool. So I just summed up my little word substitution discovery here. Gave a couple of examples. So hopefully Anne and other people find that helpful. And obviously, like, that's not a method that's really limited to when. It's a general method that you could try. It's on my little list of things to do to understand a sentence better, word substitution. It's just, it came up here because we had this controversial case, and I suspected it might not be a conjunction, but I couldn't explain it very well. And had this point, I'm not really responding to this here. Maybe I'll respond to this separately. I'm just going to send this for now. All right, maybe I'll also say, so I just said, regarding this point of Anne's about conjunction when, I say, as far as I know, a conjunction can't serve a role within the clause it joins, but conjunctions do provide information about the clauses, and that could look adverby and be considered to be playing a role. Is this correct? Rewrote that as and be thought of as playing a part. Maybe could be thought of as playing a part. And that could look adverby and could be thought of as playing a part. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. All right, I think I'll call that a video.